Hello everyone and welcome back to Coronation Street official today. And if you think you have seen explosive episodes before, this one is about to raise the bar in ways that will leave you completely breathless. Theo has crossed a line so severe, so irreversible, what Weatherfield may never feel quite the same again. Coronation Street has been rocked to its absolute core this week, and that is not an exaggeration. It is a statement of fact. What began as a simmering conflict between Theo and Todd, the kind of tension that Weatherfield residents have learned to recognize as dangerous but rarely expect to detonate so violently, has exploded into an act of shocking physical aggression that has sent shockwaves through the entire community. This wasn't a heated argument that got slightly out of hand. This was a full terrifying unraveling, a man losing his grip on whatever restraint he had left and making a choice that has permanently altered the landscape of the storyline. Nobody who witnessed it on screen or at home walked away unchanged. To really understand the weight of what happened, you have to go back to where this all began. Because this confrontation didn't materialize out of nowhere, and that's precisely what makes it so devastating. For weeks, the tension between Theo and Todd has been the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly. It builds quietly in the background, in the space between words. Unresolved conflicts that never got the resolution they needed. Resentment that was never fully named or addressed, just buried under the surface of everyday interactions, compressing and heating like something geological, and underneath all of it, this unsettling, nagging sense that Theo's behavior was moving in a direction that nobody wanted to fully acknowledge. At first, their clashes looked manageable, heated, yes, uncomfortable, absolutely. But the kind of confrontations that feel familiar in a place like Weatherfield, where emotions are always running close to the surface and nobody has ever really mastered the art of walking away. Except, there was always something different about Theo's anger. There was an edge to it that didn't sit right, a volatility that felt less like passion and more like something barely contained, like watching someone hold a lit match and insisting they are in complete control. You want to believe them, but something in your gut keeps telling you not to. Todd, being Todd, didn't step back, and honestly, I don't think anyone who knows his characters expected him to. He kept challenging, kept pushing back, kept refusing to be the one who blinked first. And in a normal situation with a normal opponent, that kind of defiance is admirable. But the tragic reality that this episode lays bare is that Todd fundamentally misjudged how far gone Theo already has. He was treating this like a battle of wills between two men who were operating by the same rules. Theo had already stopped following those rules. The episode itself is constructed with a kind of masterful, almost unbearable patience. It doesn't rush toward the explosion, it earns it. Each scene adds another layer of unease, another degree of heat to a situation that is already well past boiling point. Theo's temper becomes less and less containable, flaring at provocations so small that they wouldn't register as significant in any other context. His words sharpen, his presence changes the energy of every room he enters. Conversations falter, people shift uncomfortably, the atmosphere thickens. Those around him can feel that something is wrong. They just don't know how wrong. And that gap between sensing the danger and fully comprehending it is where the episode lives, and it is deeply effectively unsettling. And then it happens, the moment that no amount of build-up fully prepares you for, even when you have been dreading it for weeks. Theo's anger doesn't just boil over, it detonates. The confrontation escalates so rapidly that there is almost no transition between tension and violence. Words collapsing into physical aggression in the space of a heartbeat, and Todd, confident, defiant, never back down Todd, is suddenly caught completely off guard, vulnerable in a way we are not used to seeing him. I can't overstate how jarring that image is, because part of what makes this moment so impactful is watching someone who always seems to know how to handle himself suddenly rendered powerless in the face of something he genuinely did not see coming at the speed or that intensity. The violence itself is raw and unfiltered in a way that strips away every remaining layer of ambiguity around Theo's character. There is no more gray area after this. There is no more, well, he's complicated, or he's just going through something difficult. What we see is a man who has made a choice, a terrible, defining, irreversible choice, and the impact of that choice is immediate and visceral, not just physically, though the physical reality of that attack is confronting enough, but emotionally the shockwaves that radiate outward from that single act of violence touch everything and everyone connected to it. What the episode does really well, and this is where the writing earns genuine respect, is that it gives us a window into Theo's internal world without ever asking us to excuse what he has done. We can see the unraveling, we can see the external pressures and internal fractures that have been driving him toward this age. We can understand on some level the mechanics of how a person arrives at a moment like this, and then the episode asks us to hold that understanding alongside the full, undiminished weight of the harm he has caused. That is difficult, it's supposed to be, because that tension between comprehension and condemnation is where the real emotional truth of the story lives. Todd's reaction in the immediate aftermath is something I keep coming back to because it feels completely painfully authentic. The shock is there, obviously, but underneath the shock is something that hits even harder. Betrayal. This is not just the reaction of someone who has been physically hurt. This is the reaction of someone who has been forced to completely revise their understanding of another person and of a situation they thought they had a handle on. That kind of reckoning doesn't resolve quickly. It sits in you. It changes the way you move through the world for a long time afterward. And then the aftermath begins to spread through Weatherfield because nothing stays contained in this community. It never does. World travels fast. Reactions are immediate, and suddenly this single explosive moment becomes a community event, a focal point for every conversation happening on the street. Some people rally around Todd with a genuine outrage and protective fury. Others look toward Theo, trying to construct a narrative that makes sense of what they have just been told, searching for an explanation that might make it feel less frightening than it actually is. And then there is the broader, more uncomfortable conversation that starts to emerge about safety, about trust, about the things we miss or choose not to see in people we think we know. That layer of social realism is that elevates this beyond straightforward drama into something that genuinely resonates. For Theo, the consequences arrive without mercy. What might have felt like a release in the moment almost immediately transforms into a weight that has no way off his shoulder. There is nowhere to hide from what he has done and fewer places to retreat with every passing scene. Whether this becomes a moment of reckoning that forces some form of accountability or whether it accelerates a further descent into something even darker remains the burning question, and the uncertainty of it keeps you completely locked in. This is a turning point in the truest sense of the phrase, not the dramatic, convenient kind that resets by the following week, but the kind that permanently reshapes the landscape of a storyline and the characters within it. Theo's actions have broken something that cannot be repaired by conversation or a time jump. Trust between these two men is gone. The sense of security that the community of Weatherfield carries, that underlying assumption that you fundamentally know the people around you, has been punctured in a way that will linger. Todd's arc from here carries enormous potential precisely because the episode refuses to flatten him into a simple victim. There is vulnerability in his reaction, yes, a raw, exposed quality that we don't often see from him, and it is genuinely moving. But alongside that vulnerability is something resolute, a quiet, steely determination not to be defined by what was done to him. That balance between being shaken and refusing to be broken is the kind of character work that keeps a storyline meaningful well beyond its initial explosion. The ripple effects are only beginning. Legal consequences loom as a real possibility. Secrets that have been sitting quietly under the surface of this conflict may now be dislodged by the force of what has happened. And the question of whether anyone else steps into this volatile situation, whether to help to complicate escalate, hangs in the air as a very credible threat. Here is my honest read on this entire situation. I don't think Theo suddenly became someone different in that moment of violence. I think that moment revealed who he has been for a while now. Someone who had simply been managing the presentation better than anyone realized. The cracks were there, people noticed them, but there's a particular human tendency to explain away the warning signs in someone you are familiar with. To give benefit of the doubt past the point where doubt is reasonable, and Weatherfield and the viewers have been doing exactly that with Theo for weeks. That question of whether this is a man losing control or a man finally being seen clearly is the most important question the storyline is asking. And I lean firmly toward the latter because losing control is something that happens to you. What Theo did was a choice, explosive and rage fueled, yes, but a choice nonetheless, and that distinction matters enormously for how this story should be allowed to develop from here. Weatherfield has seen dramatic moments before. The street has a history of them, but what just happened between Theo and Todd has a different quality to it. It doesn't feel like a story bit, it feels like a fracture, and fractures don't heal cleanly. They leave a mark on everything around them. The consequences are still unfolding, the full fallout is still incoming, and the tension that has been released by this explosion has not disappeared. It has simply changed form. So here is what I want to know from you. Do you think Theo was always capable of this and we simply weren't paying close enough attention to the signs? Or do you believe something specific pushed him past a point of no return? And if so, what? And what about Todd? Does this make him stronger in the long run? Or does the kind of trauma he just experienced leave marks that change him in ways we won't fully see for a while yet? Tell me everything in the comments because I genuinely want to know how you are reading this. If this breakdown landed for you, please hit that like button, share it with a fellow Coronation Street fan, and make sure you are subscribed to Coronation Street Official today so you are right here when the next wave of consequences hits. Because in Weatherfield, nothing this intense ever stays buried for long.